Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I am joined by Andrea Nakayama, functional medicine nutritionist and founder of the Functional Nutrition Alliance. Andrea is a pioneer in the field of functional medicine, known for teaching clinicians and coaches how to truly see, hear, and help their clients by addressing the root causes of symptoms rather than chasing them. In this episode, we're diving into an important and often under-discussed topic: what happens when hormone replacement therapy isn't the right fit, whether it's because it's contraindicated, not accessible, or simply not aligned with a woman's personal choice. Andrea brings a compassionate and deeply informed perspective on how women can navigate perimenopause and menopause through nutrition, lifestyle, and functional approaches that honors the body's unique story. We'll talk about why HRT doesn't work for everyone, what clues to look for when it's not enough or not tolerated, and how to create resilience, energy, and well-being even without it. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for coming on today.
I'm so excited to be with you and to have this conversation.
Yeah, so nobody's going to know this because we haven't had any of the blunders recorded. Well, so first it was technical and then it was timing and then we just had a nice conversation to get to know each other a little better. So I'm actually really pumped because I feel like I can even converse more with you now. So it's almost like a blessing in disguise that we had that little technological difficulty, but I'm excited to talk about this topic with you because I've had a lot of conversations around estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. We all need it. It needs to be on board. But there are women who can't take it. There are women who've tried it and it doesn't feel great. And there are women who it just doesn't speak to them that they want to go that route. And I want them to have a space to understand what they can do to optimize their health in addition to or in lieu of.
Yes, I almost feel like having technical difficulties is the perfect setup for this conversation because when we talk about hormones not working, it's a technical difficulty in a way, but it's one we can work around.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've worked with countless women navigating hormone transitions. What inspired you to focus so deeply on helping women through this stage of life?
Yeah, so I will tell a little bit of my own story, which was that when I was pregnant back in April of 2000 with my first and only child, my late husband was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. And so he was given about 6 months to live. I was 7 weeks pregnant. He wasn't expected to live to see our son born. He did live 2.5 years and he died in 2002. That son is now 24 years old. So this is a long time ago now, but that really catapulted my entire knowledge of food as medicine because we were doing everything for my late husband, Isamu, to support the medical interventions he was going through. But also, if you think about what was going on in my body, pregnancy is in and of itself a time of major stress and hormone change. And then I had this added stress on top of it. So that was a really pivotal time in my own life that forced me to understand hormones very differently that I was able to carry forward in the work that I do. And of course, as I am now 59, I've traveled through the industry for 20 years. I've aged. I've discovered my own hormone issues. I've gone through my own transitions, my own challenges, and been able to bring that knowledge forward.
I feel like all of us in this space have had some experience with our own, difficulties and trying to figure it out on our own and then being able to help pay it forward by helping other women. So when we talk about HRT, it's often presented as the solution, especially on social media right now. That's the message that's driven home. So why do you think that message can be both helpful and limiting?
It's so interesting, Victoria. Knowing we were having this conversation, I started to write a really in-depth article about this topic, because if we look back in history, there was a time when hormone replacement therapy was used before. And there were books written, I mean, if I look back even to the year I was born, 1966, that were looking at the changes in women as a deficiency. There was a deficiency, and we needed to address that deficiency in order to actually attract the male gaze. It was all about being supple and having good skin and still being attractive. And then, of course, in the early 2000s, there was the discovery that maybe hormone therapy was leading to more issues with breast cancer and cardiovascular disease for women. That has since been uncovered, and we understand more of the nuance of it being about timing and dose and type, but there's still left a lot of fear in women about hormone replacement therapy. Even though we've repackaged it now, it's a different form of the chemical and the hormones, and we're looking at bioidentical and natural and clean and all the things. But there's a lot of repackaging now of what perimenopause, menopause, how we can actually feel like ourselves again if we have this particular solution. And again, it's been repackaged in a way that is selling us a lot of promises, that it's the be all end all, that it's going to solve all problems, our heart, our brain, our health, our bones, our skin, our sexuality, all of the things are going to come from these hormones. So I just want to say I am pro bioidentical hormone therapy, and I love when it works for people, but I worry about how it's being promoted, to your point, that it's being promoted as the be all end all, and that it's being dosed out and dealt out without the nuance that's required for women to know that they're going to have long-term results that are beneficial to them personally.
Yeah. And I feel like from the training that I got in pharmacy school and from what I've talked to people who went to a traditional medical school, and there's a lot of, it's a if this, then this kind of flow chart to prescribing. And when it comes to hormone therapy, it really needs to be individualized. It needs to be more intensively watched, especially in the beginning, that we're not getting in that 15-minute annual checkup. And then there are people who just feel miserable on it.
Yes. And we have to start low and go slow. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are getting multiple hormones at once. They're getting dosing that may be evidence-based according to the literature, but not appropriate for their bodies. We often don't know our hormone levels when we're 20 to know what our normal is for when we're receiving exogenous hormones. But from my perspective, it's also about how we metabolize hormones. And again, I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. So I'm looking at the terrain in which the chemical messengers are going, not just the chemical messenger in isolation.
So let's talk a little bit about the metabolism of hormones, because I feel like people don't really understand that that's important. And some people don't absorb hormones the same. Well, no one really absorbs hormones the same way. But when you say the terrain, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so before we talk about the terrain, I just want to say when I talk about hormones with people, I want them to understand that we create hormones, we transport hormones, we utilize hormones, and we excrete hormones. All four of those things need to be happening. And in order to create hormones, we of course need the building blocks for the hormones. We need cholesterol, we need amino acids, we need micronutrients, and we need stable conditions. We need blood sugar balance, we need thyroid function. So all of that needs to happen for the synthesis of hormones, whether they're made endogenously or brought in exogenously. For transportation and communication, that's going through the bloodstream, and we need the carrier proteins and receptors and target tissues to be healthy and responsive. For utilization, we need to know that the cells are listening, that the message can be received. And if we are inflamed or our cells are resistant or nutrient deprived, we can't receive the message. And perhaps most important and first line is understanding that clearance is happening, that the liver and the gut are moving the metabolites safely out of the body. So I always like to say, if you're not sleeping, you're not pooping, and your blood sugar isn't balanced, we don't have a stable terrain. And that's especially true for bringing hormones into the system. So that brings me back to your terrain question and how we have to recognize that hormones are messengers. We often think of them as the master regulators, but they can't regulate in a terrain that isn't responsive. So those messengers respond to what's happening in the body. And we have to remember that the gut and the liver, so again, how we metabolize and excrete the hormones, that blood sugar balance, so the cortisol can hijack the estrogen and progesterone from being in balance if we don't have that there. Thyroid health, this is my issue, so we really need the thyroid to be healthy so that it's not also impacting estrogen utilization. And immune and inflammatory regulation is key. So that terrain, again, all of what I'm saying may sound complicated, but if we bring it back to sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance, if you're going looking for a fix for your hormones and those things aren't in place, or you need some help there, that's where you often need to focus first before you're putting those exogenous hormones into your body. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm not sleeping, it's a progesterone issue. Well, maybe it's not a progesterone issue. Maybe you're going to sleep too late, or you're drinking caffeine too early, or you have electronics in your, there's so many things. It's not necessarily, we used to say it's not a melatonin deficiency. Now I feel like saying it's not a progesterone deficiency. If you're not sleeping, progesterone might help, but we're still not addressing the underlying dysfunction that's going to help you really maximize the use of the hormones you're bringing in.
Oh yeah, I don't know how many women I've talked to who say, "Oh, my sleep is okay," and I'll say, "Okay, let's break down your routine and let's start a few hours before bed." And they don't even think about 2 hours before bedtime what they're doing, or if they're drinking alcohol, and so when you start to think back on those kind of things, there's a lot of little tweaks you can make to really adjust and have good quality, proper time sleep.
Yes, and sleep is one of our best ways to detoxify, to feed our microbiome, to support the cascade of our hormones. So when I think about hormones, and I'm making a little triangle here, a little pyramid, our sex hormones are at the tip of the pyramid. At the base is blood sugar, then we go to insulin, cortisol, thyroid hormones, and then sex hormones. And oftentimes we're going top down, and that's a lot of times where we don't see the benefits, or we don't see sustainable benefits when we haven't really addressed the foundation to support the hormones.
Have you had women come to you saying that hormones just don't work for them and they're looking for an alternate solution, but they wanted hormones, and you're able to fix the terrain so that they can bring hormones on board?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And there's so many different ways to look at that. So I'm one of those people who hormones don't feel good, when bioidenticals don't feel good when I take them. And my bones could use them. There's definitely tissues that can use them. And I do wonder for myself, when I get these other things in place, do I want to take the hormones? At this stage in my life, I don't think I want to take the hormones because I've gone too long. I'm in age where I would then be bringing something in that I'm not even making anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think I can work around the ways that the hormones would be providing benefits. I may change that decision in a year or two, but I do think if we're working with somebody at an earlier stage in their life where we can do that work, yes, we can get them to a place, and I have gotten people to a place where they can receive the hormones and utilize the hormones and feel better on the hormones. We're often going slower and more individualized than what was originally prescribed.
And for the women who hormones are contraindicated, they aren't supposed to be taking them, they're completely off the table. How do you help them? Because there are a lot of women I know that feel completely lost and helpless, thinking that they can't even try them.
Well, there's so many things we can do. I want to really make sure people know that it's not like people have existed throughout millennia without taking hormones exogenously, externally into their body. It's not like that's the only way we're going to survive, or that's the only way we can help our brains, our bones, or our hearts. There's other ways, and it really does come back to supporting the terrain. So again, I'm not taking hormones. My sex drive is fine. My brain is fine. My energy is fine. Like, all of those things are fine. What has led me to do a little bit more digging are the results of a bone density scan and looking at the bones and knowing that estrogen does help with our bones. Now, let me just say that when I got those results, the immediate response I get is, you need to be on estrogen. And I know estrogen doesn't feel good on my body. And so I am looking for those alternate ways to say, what is it specifically? So I want to just use my own story as an example with that. It's not like, oh, I need estrogen to feel better globally. There's specific things. What is it you're concerned about? What are the symptoms you're experiencing? And then that's what we work on. It's not like, oh, I'm experiencing menopause. I need hormones. I can't take hormones. Now what, Andrea? What do I do? It's like, what are you experiencing? What are the symptoms? Because yes, there's so many ways we can address those different symptoms and have the body be more in a state of regulation.
What are some of those ways that we can support hormones naturally if you're choosing not to go the HRT route?
Well, I think it really is getting back to making sure that we have the nutrients that we need, that our other labs are balanced. And again, not just looking at it as hormone replacement and what are the hormones addressing, but what am I addressing? What are you addressing? What is it that you're looking for help on? Not just I'm looking for help on the reality that my hormones are decreasing, right? That I'm not really producing hormones anymore. Like, is your issue that you're estrogen dominant? Is your issue that you have estrogen deficiency? Is that causing you symptoms, or have you decided that that is your pathological diagnosis because it came up on a lab? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm estrogen deficient. Now I walk around with that idea that that's something wrong with me. No, I may be an age where I'm estrogen deficient, but what are my actual health concerns? Not, I need estrogen because I'm estrogen deficient. That is natural as we age and doesn't need to be or be felt as a problem. So I just want to reframe the question as, it's not all about hormone replacement therapy. It's about working with what our body needs to feel like we're in our being vital throughout our lifespan, our health span.
That's true. And I think there's also something to be said for just making sure that you're finding nutrient deficiencies, regardless of hormone therapy on board or not. I know from my personal experience, I was in the throes of perimenopause. I finally found a doctor who acknowledged that's what it was. And then I was given a high dose patch of estrogen and a low dose of progesterone. And it was a nightmare. And it made me feel terrible. But also, my diet was trash. I was really stressed. I wasn't sleeping. So when you start adding all of that up, medications aren't the panacea. You still have to take care of yourself, and it's not going to fix everything.
That's absolutely correct. So when we associate these symptoms with perimenopause or menopause, those are what I like to call branches on the tree. They are the effect of what's happening in the roots and the terrain. So if we are addressing the roots and the terrain, we may not experience the signs and symptoms that are associated with perimenopause and menopause, or we may be able to manage them and pass through them without so much effect. When we have those symptoms, we immediately go to, oh, hormones are the answer, when in fact, the terrain is the answer that helps us to navigate the shifts that are a natural part of aging.
Are you ready to finally get personalized support for your midlife health without committing to a long program? With my new one-on-one coaching model, You'll start with a single 50-minute deep dive session where we review your full health history, lifestyle, and current concerns. Together, we'll create a plan designed specifically around your hormones, stress, sleep, and nutrition, one that's actually realistic for your life. From there, you can book follow-up sessions whenever you need them to stay on track, get accountability, overcome obstacles, or simply have someone cheering you on along the way. There's no pressure, no long-term contract, and no need to repeat the initial consult. Once you've completed that first session, you're my client for life, and we'll keep in touch in between your sessions. This flexible approach is built for real midlife women who want to experience guidance, science-based strategies, and compassionate support that evolves with them. If you're ready to take the first step, visit womenmasteringmidlife.com to book your free 15-minute discovery call. Let's talk about your goals and map out your next steps toward feeling vibrant, confident, and in control of your health again. So we talked about sleep, but you said if you're not sleeping or you're not pooping. So let's talk about that one. So
Yes.
What are you looking for in digestion and gut health in women at this stage?
Yes, well, we absolutely want to be eliminating because that is how we get rid of our excess hormones. And if we're not eliminating, we are recirculating hormones and can feel worse because those hormones are usually in a metabolic form that is more dangerous to us. So first of all, I want to make sure we are eliminating, and I want to make sure we have enough fat, fiber, and protein in every meal or snack, and that we're tracking that. What makes the difference in your elimination? And of course, stress and sleep can make differences there too in our elimination. So just really people keeping a kind of like I call it a food, mood, poop journal, and mood is in quotation marks. It's any sign or symptom. And I'm not asking people to measure. And I know there are sometimes issues with tracking because of diet culture and how we've tracked food in the past. But I just want people doing it more for a distant view of I ate, I pooped, I had knee pain, whatever it is that comes up, felt brain fog today, and start making associations, not microanalyzing, not belly button analyzing, but like just seeing, do I have energy between breakfast and lunch when I eat this for breakfast versus when I eat that for breakfast? And if I'm working with a support person who's in the field of helping me with my diet and lifestyle, is it something I can bring forward so we can have a discussion? I notice that when I skip breakfast and have an oat milk latte, that I'm exhausted by 10 and feel like I can eat a steak, versus when I wake up and eat something that supports me with fat, fiber, protein, I feel pretty good until lunch, or I notice I need to eat lunch at 11 and then I'm okay until 3. Like, start tuning in. I think one of the things, going back to your earlier question, Victoria, about like the dangers of the way that the menopause industrial complex has sold us hormones, is that we're continuing to farm everything out to a solution outside of us. And what I really want to ask women to do is just take a pause and tune in. Take a pause like you did and say, I went on these hormones, but I'm actually not eating well and I'm super stressed. And what happens when I change that? Do I need these high doses of hormones? Do I feel better with them? What is happening? And we farmed so much out. It used to only be the scale that we farmed our health out to. And now we've farmed our health out to influencers, to functional tests, to supplements that we think there's the answer. And I just think we need a pause to tune in and know more about ourselves. We help ourselves, but we also help those who are looking to help us because we have more information to bring forward.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is one of your core teachings being the body has its own story. And I think that's something that we get so wrapped up in work and family and taking care of everybody. We stop thinking about taking a minute to listen to our own body and what it's telling us, or we're taught not to believe it, I feel
Totally.
like.
Good point. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think this is really one of you, like you said, a core message that women need to reclaim for ourselves because we're being sold so much. We are the buying public. Women are the buyers in our culture. And everybody knows that. That's making a buck. And so they're selling us everything. And I'm not saying that some of what's being sold isn't in our best interest or doesn't have our best interest in mind, but not all of it does. And so really taking a step back, I feel like we could save in dollars so much by just spending a little time in reflection and tuning in and understanding the differences in how we feel, what's happening when our heart rate is racing, and how does that make us feel? How does that impact our poop? How does that impact our sleep? When we're going through a stressful time, what are the things that counterbalance that? And I'm just going to share that I've been leading a longevity book club for this whole year. It's a year long. So I'm reading a longevity book every 2 weeks. They don't have to, but I am. And it's been a really interesting discussion in terms of where we look at kind of the biohacking of longevity, which is also something we're doing with hormones. We're trying to hack them versus the deeper understanding of what happens when we age, how changes in the body happen, how we honor them, what society tells us about aging, which is very related to those menopausal years, how we embody those stories about aging and we believe them, like we believe that we're estrogen dominant or whatever we've been told. Not that it's not a real thing. It's just not necessarily something that has to be addressed through hormone therapy, right? Like just looking at these stories that we're fed and recognizing that those impact our physiology too. We are ecological beings that are impacted by everything going on around us, whether it's the cultural narrative, the supplements we take, the hormones we take, the food we eat, the air we breathe. We are ecological beings impacted by all of it. And just taking a pause helps us to understand, wait, who am I in this environment? And I think that's the beauty of aging. Like it's something we have more memory and more contextual understanding to embrace than we did when we were younger. And one of the conversations that the women in that group are having is, what do we miss of aging and wisdom when we take hormones? And what might we miss if we don't take hormones? So what's the trade-off in our aging bodies when we do or don't make that decision, or can or can't make that decision?
I know it feels like such a push pull. Like for every minute or day, I think like embracing the softness and the wrinkles and the gray hairs and the things that come with the beauty of being able to wake up another day. Then there's another day where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm looking old. It's become women that get older are irrelevant and I don't have reproductive ability anymore. So am I even useful in society? There's just this constant noise being thrown at us. And there's this desperation to have a solution that keeps us buying all these things. And I talk to women who I'll say, okay, so what kind of supplements are you taking? And they're taking so many different things that they're almost counterbalancing, like they're counteracting each other with what they're taking. And it's a lot of money and most of it's getting like peed out. I don't know. There's just so many things. I'm like, we just need to simplify. Let's just like have a clean slate and let's start.
And like the power to what you're saying, Victoria, of some other elements of life that actually contribute to longevity that we are overlooking when we go on that quest. Joy, love,
peace.
Serenity, peace. All of that. And the things that I'm going to say I've taken away from the conversations and all the reading, which has gone through the science and technology all the way to the spirituality and what's happening in the brain and all the different aspects of it. balance, working on our balance, working on our like knees and our gums, which is very related to our digestion. Like 2 things we could be doing that actually support our longevity more than all the hacks that were sold is very supportive. And it's just so related to the HRT conversation, because the conversation around menopause is essentially another package of the longevity conversation. It's a conversation about not wanting to get old.
Yeah. And there's also, there's a very definitive line of like pro-hormone and anti-hormone, and you can't be in the middle somewhere sometimes. Yeah, I know. I hope that more of us come out that say that we're in the middle and we're not being like, pick a side, but in the beginning, I've been doing hormones or I've been talking perimenopause, menopause, and studying it for 5 years now. And so I was kind of in the beginning before the menopause influencers really took hold. And, we still can't say vulva on social media. I probably just got myself an explicit listing on this podcast because I used the word vulva. But now it's so much the landscape of social media for us. It's they know our age and they target our algorithm.
Absolutely. And we're getting fed so much that is really targeting that this is the solution. And I think for me, the answer to every question that my students or clients ever ask me is, it depends. And that's how I feel about hormone replacement therapy. It depends. Is it right or wrong? Well, it depends. And it depends on the individual and the individual's symptoms and what we're trying to resolve and the terrain. So there is a time and a place for hormone replacement therapy, and it's not the be all end all, and it doesn't work for everybody. So there's like 3 different areas there, like could be necessary and helpful, isn't the be all end all. We all are being told and sold it's going to be, and doesn't work for everybody. And just because it doesn't work for you, you're not bad or wrong or doing it wrong and like left out of the conversation.
There are a lot of women who have started to turn not necessarily away from Western medicine, but leaning more toward functional medicine and different alternative in air quotes medicines. How can we help them differentiate between functional testing that's appropriate and professional guidance that's appropriate, and the red flags out there of tests that aren't really necessary and just want all your money?
Oh my gosh, this is my soapbox. I'm like, let me get on my soapbox.
I saw you, like, if there's a clip of this part, you like literally stand up in your seat. Here I go.
I think we are so sold a lie of over testing for things that aren't leading us to pathological diagnoses. So what we're doing with a lot of the functional testing, and I'm not again for or against it, I think it's being sold to us as having the answer. Functional testing, first of all, isn't always evidence-based. So when we talk about an industrial complex, a lot of those companies are designing things to sell us something that we think is going to help us, but they haven't gone through the kind of testing that other testing has gone through to understand how it actually is going to support us. It is more about clues than determinants. If it's used as understanding like the backdrop, like, okay, here's what I know is happening for this individual. I need a little more information because I don't understand. Let me get a little bit more context. But people are using it as a pathological diagnosis that then gets a protocol based on that diagnosis. So it's a flurry of supplements or a diet that goes with that result that isn't going to lead that person to resolution and is going to cost them not just the money of the testing, but the money of all those interventions that may not be appropriate for them and may be too much at once. And there are companies now that are very popular and growing really, really quickly. I will not name them, that have the name that we're talking about behind them, that are selling lots of tests at once. And people are getting those results and they have no clue what to do with them. So now they have all this information. Again, they're then self-pathologizing. And this like pandemic of self-pathologizing that we have. I am estrogen dominant. I have this many metabolites that are doing this way that people are identifying based on that functional testing is also really damaging. It's very fixed and it's not broad in the way that testing is meant to be used. Clues that help us understand things. I'm all for basic serum testing to start. Basic dietary and lifestyle recommendations. I understand the complexity of the physiology, but I'm still making recommendations that help us shift that without going into specifics. Take this probiotic because you have that situation. That's overcomplicating what we need to address at a broader level. And those tests are being used incorrectly. They're costing people a lot of money and they are leading people astray and into a fixed mindset that is having them self-diagnose and walk around like they have some issue that may not be really what they need to deal with. I do want to talk about hormone testing and where that comes in from my perspective. So again, I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. I do not prescribe hormones, but I do look at hormone metabolism. So a test like the Dutch test, the dry urine test for complete hormones, is helpful for me and my scope because I can see metabolism a little bit more. I can see the relationship between the hormones. I can see the metabolization and the metabolites. How are you working with different estrogen metabolites in your body? But that helps me help the system, not the hormone replacement therapy. That might help me say, hey, before you take estrogen, you already have estrogen metabolites that can be more dangerous for you. Let's make sure you're eliminating your estrogens. Test again before we even bring in estrogen. So again, I'm coming from a scope of practice where I'm not prescribing hormones. I'm looking at the environment into which they're going.
Yeah. And that's a good differentiation as well. But I think also it's just, I don't even know I'm trying to think of like how to word it without sounding annoyed as a pharmacist. Because I feel annoyed when I think about like all the tests and money and supplements and everybody, I feel like now everybody has their own supplements too. And then there's the big online shops that you can have things sent to you within 2 days. And there's counterfeits and there's all these things that are on the market. And it just makes me so angry because a lot of times it's what are you eating?
Yes.
I mean, if you're not chewing most of your food,
correct,
and you're eating a lot of processed food and you're not getting enough dietary fiber and you're not getting your nutrients from your food, there are things that should be supplemented, but a lot of times you're just not eating right.
Yes. Yeah. Or eating right for your body, for your needs. Take a slow down. It's not all about the supplements. The testing might be something you're doing before you've done the cleanup. I mean, what I'm really trying to impress upon people is that we only do more testing when we need more information for more interventions. If I don't need more information, if I got enough based on what you're doing every day, how you're sleeping, pooping, whether your blood sugar is balanced. And by that, I'm not measuring. I'm looking at fat, fiber, protein, and your serum labs, your glucose, your insulin, your hemoglobin A1C. We don't need a continuous glucose monitor, which I can also talk about where that's led us astray. But, really just saying, when do I need more information? And at that point, how do I clinically understand what more information I need as opposed to everything, and then make decisions from there? And most of the time, I do not need any of those tests to have really effective clinical outcomes.
Oh, yeah. So we're supposed to be talking about not using hormone therapy, but now I'm like, okay, CGMs. So I actually tried a CGM, not because I wanted to biohack myself, but I was just kind of a nerd. Like, let me see how this, if I eat white bread, what happens to my blood sugar? If I eat like a whole grain bread, what happens to my blood sugar? So I was doing it more for like, just my own little personal knowledge, but I did stick myself with a needle and wear it for however long. There is that. But then even though I knew I'm not diabetic, I don't have an actual need for a CGM, and I was just trying to find patterns in my blood sugar. It's normal. Like it would be low, and then I would eat and it would go up, and then guess what? Insulin would take it back down because I have a normal functioning body. So there's a lot of things that are being sold to people that they really don't need. But I was fixated on my phone. Like, I'm going to eat something and then I'm going to check my monitor right now. And it almost became its own syndrome.
Obsessive. Yes. Yes.
Because it was like, okay, what's my number going to be now? And then how long does it take to go down? And what is it doing at night? And it just felt extreme.
Yes. And I will say I wore a CGM 15 years ago, like you did, when it was like a little belt around my waist and a contraption I had to work with a company on. It wasn't just a little stick in my arm.
Yeah.
So I also went down that route and was interested in the results. I think what we don't understand is that not only do we have the normal ebb and flow? We eat, the insulin comes in, it cleans it up, it brings it into the cells, and that's a normal pattern. But we also have other factors that affect our blood sugar besides whether the bread is white or wheat, right? So there's the stress we're having, there is different times in our cycle, there's whether we had enough sleep last night, how stressed we are. There's so many different factors that are going to impact that ebb and flow and the production and utilization of the blood sugars and the insulin. So that's one thing that I'm always saying to people when you see those people, those influencers that are like, I ate this and this happened to my blood sugar, that's also going to be really distinct for all of us. So research several years ago coming out of Israel showed that there is a personalized glycemic response. So two people can eat French fries and have a very different response, and eat ice cream and have an opposite response, right? So very individualized how we respond to different foods. So we can't just trust an influencer who's showing us what they ate and what the response was. On top of that, I saw recent research that I posted on LinkedIn that is showing that continuous glucose monitoring is good if you're diabetic, but the results are not very accurate if you're pre-diabetic or have normal glucose levels. So it doesn't give us the same information and isn't something we can trust unless you are actually working with a diabetic situation. So I think that that's really important for us to be considering. What are we sold and what is the context in which we are thinking about those results and obsessing about them and deciding that they're the be all end all. I just want to share one other point that relates to this from the Longevity Book Club. So there's a book by Ellen Langer called The Mindful Body, and she is a researcher at Harvard in mindfulness and kind of the science of mindfulness. And one story she tells is that two people who get a hemoglobin A1C. One gets a 5.6 and one gets a 5.7. And if you ask any endocrinologist, there's no difference between 5.6 and 5.7. And in fact, a different day or even a different time of day, those people could be switched with one another. But her research has shown that the people who get the 5.7 and are labeled pre-diabetic end up getting diabetes at a much higher rate than the people who weren't told they were pre-diabetic at the 5.6. Again, starting point of the race is no different than each other, but we've told somebody they're pre-diabetic and we haven't told this other person that they have any issue. And the person who's taken on that pathology of being pre-diabetic may do more to try to reverse it, but they've been told in their mind that they're pre-diabetic, they're destined to get diabetes, and they're more likely to get it. And so I think it's a really good thing, pointing back to the tests that we were talking about and how I was saying we internalize these ideas that aren't pathological, but we kind of take them on and own them, and how that actually shapes our health outcomes as much as the things we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Which it makes me, I started thinking about my ring that I sleep in, because it's the same thing. So I love it because I track my basal temperature so I can see if I'm ovulating. And that's mostly just so that I know when I might have a period. So it's for personal, like, planning. But if I wake up and I feel really rested, like, oh, that was such a good night's sleep, like I killed it. And then I look at my phone and it says I didn't have an adequate, like, REM, or I didn't have adequate deep sleep. And then I got like a 70. And then I'm like, wait, I got a 70. That's almost a D. I almost failed my sleep. And I was like, I was so proud of myself until I looked at my stupid score. So that's something, I mean, I appreciate the knowledge if you're having an issue to address certain issues, but to just know things. I mean, God, life was so much simpler when we were like in our 20s and our teens, that we didn't have all this access to this stuff.
Exactly. There's a place and a time for it, but I always say that the tools of optimization are not the tools of stabilization. So people who are using tools for biohacking and improving and improving and improving, if the terrain isn't stable, that's where you have to start. Otherwise, you're confusing the situation, trying to hack what needs more support. And so many complexities that we're talking about, but I really want to bring it back to like sleep, poop, blood sugar balance. For blood sugar balance, fat, fiber, protein at every meal. Eat more colors in the rainbow. Know which foods don't work for you. One of the things I've seen a lot of women my age going through is that they're working out harder, lifting bigger weights, and eating a lot more protein because we're being sold a protein heavy message right now. And I've witnessed at my age us go through many different patterns: high fat, low sugar, high, whatever it is. But now we're in the high protein craze. Protein is great. We also have a more difficulty digesting protein as we age, so it can become more of a problem. But what I've seen is that people start to eat foods they don't usually eat because they're prescribing or subscribing to a dietary theory like more protein. So I'll be like, well, what are you eating when you eat more protein? Well, I started eating this and this and this, and I'm eating cottage cheese. And I'm like, wait, you don't usually eat dairy. Why are you eating cottage cheese? Well, it's high. I'm told it's high in protein.
I need to get my protein. Yeah.
So those 3 dietary principles: fat, fiber, protein at every meal, eat the rainbow. You're going to get more of your fiber and you're going to get more of your phytonutrients that are really supporting that production of all those hormones we're talking about and the utilization. But know your yes, no, maybe list. And that's where we can all start. What foods make me feel good? what foods don't make me feel good, and what foods am I not sure about, and how do I get help there, understanding that. And believe me, I've seen the patients who have conditioned food hypersensitivity where they can only eat 3 foods because they've decided that everything else is harmful and this is maybe okay. So we have to see, how do I get enough of the nutrients I need and my diet be as expansive as it can be for me, while knowing which foods don't work for you. My diet is expansive, but there's certain foods I don't eat.
Yeah. I do think, I was thinking about the ring and the foods and all. I will say the one benefit to wearing a ring for a regular amount of time is I stopped drinking alcohol, because every time I knew exactly the nights I drank. If I looked back at my chart, I could look 5 years back, like back when the ring came out. I know every time I had alcohol in some amount, even a glass of wine, I know exactly the nights I drank it because it trashes my sleep. So I did recognize, okay, I need to stop drinking alcohol. So that's one that is a benefit.
Absolutely. I love my ring. And I think it's really just like taking a broader perspective as opposed to thinking like, oh, this means some truth and I'm bad or good, I got a D. It's like, I'm going through a lot of stress right now, and just recognizing like, okay, I'm actually taking the time to get more sleep, but my heart rate is definitely being impacted. So what can I do to support myself while I'm going through this stressful time? So it does give me that little indicator, but it doesn't tell me what to do. It gives me a clue, and then I work with that clue.
And you're bringing it back to things that they may not be, it's not easy to overhaul your diet, and it's not easy to change your sleep patterns, but they're simple. It's very simple.
Yes. And I call it the simplicity on the other side of complexity. I understand the complexity of systems biology, of the entire body's ecosystem, and still it is simple in terms of the intervention. When somebody's coming to me with fatigue, I'm not asking about their hormones, I'm asking about their hydration. If we're not hydrated and our blood isn't fluid and it's not pumping to our heart and our brain, oftentimes when I ask people who are experiencing fatigue, tell me about your hydration, they're like silent and they're like, why are you asking? And I'm like, well, I can see it in your red blood function. And like, that's just it's just a serum test that their doctor ran. Not even one I have to run or anything else. I can see and make those associations. And so I think really just bringing it back to some of the simplicity. Yes, the system is complex, but our interventions don't need to be.
So if there's one last thing that you can say to the midlife women out there, the listeners, what would be the most hopeful thing that you could send them off with to reclaim agency and their choice in their midlife health journey?
Yeah, I that's a big one, Victoria.
You have 10 seconds to decide your answer.
Ding, 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 ding. I just think that a lot changes as we age, and as we're aging women, our roles change, our relevance changes, but we're not done. And I think if we live into our purpose and our joy, and we find that, it doesn't have to be the big purpose in life. If we find the things that really fuel us, I just want to remind women that actually impacts the chemistry within as well. Joy, laughter, I go to my dance class, like all those things actually help with our vitality. It doesn't need to be a hormone fix. If hormones work for you, I applaud that. But if you're not going that route for whatever reason, you are not left behind. We can be vital and have rich lives as well.
I think that's the perfect answer. So thank you. And thank you so much for going going on all the rabbit trails with me that I took you down, whether or not they pertain to the topic. It was fun to have a conversation over.
Or I took you down.
I know you're like, I'm starting to think, did you see light bulbs? I'm like, wait, I have to hold that for a minute to get there. So listeners can learn more about your work and resources through the Functional Nutrition Alliance. I'll put all the information of how to find you down in the show notes. Do you have a quick link you want to share for the people who don't actually like scroll down and read the show notes though?
Yeah, if you go to Andrea at andreanakayama.com or Andrea Nakayama on all the platforms, you will find me and find your way back to any other places. But that article that I'm writing will be at andreanakayama.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Byrd. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.